This is me, July 29th, 2008. It is 12:33 Mountain Time. Covering all my bases, making sure that if something happens to me or my family or all of us, that our assets are documented.
It was cold.
On July 29, 2008, Susan Powell sat alone in her Utah home and recorded a quiet but chilling message. This is me. July 29, 2008. It is 12:33 a.m. Mountain Time. I'm just covering all my bases. She spoke not as a woman being paranoid, but as someone preparing for something she feared might actually happen. Her voice was calm, deliberate, but every word hinted at a storm quietly building behind the scenes. Susan documented her assets, her life, her marriage, not for legal reasons, but for survival. It wasn't just about her belongings. It was about what might be lost. Because deep inside, Susan sensed what few ever acknowledge, that the man she married could one day become her greatest threat. It was a quiet Sunday, December 6, 2009, in West Valley City, Utah. Susan went to church with her two young sons, Charlie and Braden, ages 4 and 2. A friend dropped by that afternoon, and everything appeared normal, a peaceful family evening. But by the next morning, Susan was gone. She didn't show up to work. Her kids weren't at daycare. Calls to her went unanswered.
We are on our way back, and I can't believe that somehow my brain missed the day. I thought today was Sunday. That was really, really stupid. All right, I'll talk to you later. Okay, bye.
When police arrived at the Powell residence, they found no forced entry, no signs of a struggle, but something was off. 2 box fans were blowing on a damp spot on the carpet. Susan's purse, phone, wallet, and keys were still inside the home. She hadn't left voluntarily. Hours later, Josh Powell returned home with the boys and gave a bizarre explanation. He had taken them camping overnight in freezing weather, in the middle of the night. The story didn't just sound strange, it screamed suspicion. The quiet of that home wasn't normal. It was staged. And the woman at the heart of it had vanished into silence. Josh Powell's explanation was filled with contradictions from the very beginning. He claimed he'd taken his young sons camping in the Utah desert around midnight, during bitter winter cold. When asked why, he said he'd forgotten what day it was. Investigators immediately saw through the lie. This wasn't just a strange decision, it was absurd. No food, no gear, no proper clothing, and no communication with his job the next morning. But the most chilling moment came from his own son. 4-year-old Charlie, when interviewed, said that his mom had gone camping with them, but never came back.
Okay, so Charlie, when you guys came home from camping, who came home with you?
My dad
And?
and my mom stayed at Dinosaur National Park.
Your mom stayed there?
Yeah.
How do you know your mom stayed?
Because I was coming.
Because you were coming.
Yeah.
So your mom stayed at the park. Where did she stay at the park? Do you know where?
She stayed at Dinosaur National Park.
Do you know where at the park? No?
My mom stayed where a crystals are.
Where what are?
Where a crystals
Mommy
are.
stayed where the crystals are,
crystal-
he said. A child's memory can be scattered, but what he described directly contradicted his father's claims. That detail alone was enough to give detectives pause. Meanwhile, Josh's behavior grew increasingly suspicious. He told police Susan's phone was missing, but they found it in his car.
Susan, we are on our way back, and I can't believe that somehow my brain missed the day. I thought today was Sunday. That was really, really stupid. All right, I'll talk to you later. Okay, bye.
Even worse, it contained a voicemail from Josh himself, left after Susan had already vanished. He was trying to fabricate a timeline, a weak one, but it was already falling apart. To understand Susan's disappearance, police needed to understand her life at home. Susan and Josh had married in 2001 after meeting in the early 2000s. What started as a seemingly normal relationship quickly turned toxic. Josh Powell was manipulative, deeply controlling, and financially reckless. He insisted on managing all money, even though Susan worked full-time. He restricted her access to the family's income, making her ask for permission to buy groceries. Friends described her as a woman losing her voice, her independence, her identity. She followed rules Josh created. She lived under surveillance, emotional pressure, and constant fear. And then there was Josh's father, Susan Powell, a sinister presence in their lives. Stephen developed an infatuation with Susan, stealing her underwear, secretly filming her, and even attempting to kiss her. His obsession was repulsive, and Susan knew it. She told friends about the discomfort. And more than that, she began to prepare. She wrote a will. She recorded messages. She documented everything, just in case. Susan wasn't paranoid, she was being hunted in her own home. Her fear was real, and her voice was growing louder in the dark. With Susan now officially missing, all eyes turned to Josh Powell. From the start, he showed a stunning lack of concern. He didn't participate in searches. He didn't plead for help. Instead, he hired a lawyer and shut down all cooperation with investigators. Soon after, he moved with his sons to Washington State, into the home of his father, Stephen. But the clues he left behind were damning. Blood droplets, confirmed to be Susan's, were found on the tile floor near the couch. 2 fans were drying a suspicious wet spot on the carpet. Most hauntingly, police uncovered Josh's internet history. In the months leading up to Susan's disappearance, he had searched how to dispose of a body in abandoned mine shafts. Utah deserts are full of them, narrow, deep, and deadly. Detectives began to believe this wasn't a spontaneous disappearance. It was premeditated. It was planned. And Susan, they feared, had been murdered and hidden in a place so remote, she might never be found. Yet without a body, without a witness, the case remained agonizingly just out of reach. The darkness surrounding the Powell family didn't stop with Josh. Investigators soon turned their attention to Susan Powell, the man whose obsession with Susan had crossed every imaginable line. In 2011, police executed a search warrant at Stephen's Washington home. What they found was staggering. Thousands of images and videos, mostly voyeuristic, filled his computers and hard drives. Women and girls were filmed without consent. And among them, Susan. Stephen had been watching her for years. He wrote disturbing journal entries, chronicling his fantasies, his thefts, his desires. He had stolen her personal items, written about kissing her, and even believed she might reciprocate his feelings. He was arrested and charged with voyeurism and child pornography. But the implications were larger. If this was how his father behaved, what did it say about Josh? Meanwhile, Josh's brother Michael was suspected of helping cover up the crime. Michael sold his car to a salvage yard just days after Susan vanished. Cadaver dogs hit on the trunk. Though DNA results were inconclusive, the scent of decomposition confirmed everyone's worst fears. Michael later died by suicide, taking whatever secrets he held to the grave. February 5, 2012, was supposed to be a routine supervised visit. Josh Powell was allowed limited access to his sons, Charlie and Braden, at a rented home in Graham, Washington. When the caseworker arrived, Josh opened the door, pulled the boys inside, and locked it behind him. She knocked, confused. But then, she smelled gasoline. Frantic, she called 911, reporting that something was wrong. And then, a blast. The house erupted into flames, shaking the neighborhood. Fire crews arrived, but it was too late. Inside, they found the charred bodies of Josh and his 2 sons. But the fire wasn't what killed the boys. Josh had first struck both children with a hatchet, and then filled the home with accelerants before setting it ablaze. It was the ultimate act of control, a last, horrific statement. He took their lives to keep the truth buried. To silence them. To punish those who tried to take them away. In his final moments, Josh destroyed not just evidence, but innocence. The explosion closed a tragic chapter, but the mystery of Susan Powell remained. Michael was gone. Stephen died in 2018 after serving prison time. And Susan's body was still missing. After years of searching, the case was officially closed in 2013. Authorities concluded what everyone already suspected: Josh Powell had murdered his wife. The motive? Control. Power. Rage. The method? Likely a remote Utah mine shaft, never to be discovered. Yet even as the evidence mounted, no justice had ever come. There would be no trial. No confession. Just an unanswered question burning through the years: how did this all happen? How did so many warnings go unheard? The aftermath wasn't just grief. It was failure of systems, safeguards, and too many silences. Susan Powell's story didn't end with her death, or even with her disappearance. It lives on in the voice she left behind, in the recordings, in the documents, and in the pain of those who loved her. She had tried to speak up. She had tried to protect herself. But the help never came fast enough. Her sons are gone, victims of a man who couldn't be stopped. Her body, still missing. But her memory continues. Through advocacy, through legislation, and through the quiet power of remembering. She was a mother. A daughter. A friend. And above all, she was a woman who knew something was wrong, and begged the world to listen. Her voice still echoes. And we must never let it fade. The story of Susan Powell is not just the tale of a missing woman. It is the unraveling of a life that began in love and ended in silence. She was a devoted mother, a hard-working professional, and a woman who saw the danger coming. She left behind clues, recorded warnings, documented her fears, and yet, it wasn't enough. Her husband, Josh Powell, claimed ignorance while spinning lies. He took his sons into the freezing desert at midnight and called it a camping trip. He said Susan stayed home. But her phone, her purse, her blood, all told a different story. And when his son Charlie whispered the truth, that "Mommy didn't come back," the world shuddered at what that might mean. Behind closed doors, Susan lived under control, manipulation, and isolation. A marriage that looked stable on the outside was, in truth, a prison. And lurking just beyond the bars was Josh's father, Stephen Powell, a man whose obsession with her crossed into the grotesque. A man who stole her privacy, her safety, and maybe, in some way, helped set this tragedy in motion. Even as the case unfolded, justice remained elusive. Josh never faced charges. He never confessed. And when he knew he was cornered, when the law took his children away, he made the ultimate, irreversible choice. He murdered Charlie and Braden in a fire he set himself. He struck them with a hatchet. Then let the flames finish the horror. He took their lives, and with them, the last hope of truth. His brother Michael took his own life soon after, and their father Stephen died without ever revealing what he knew. The people who might have answered the final questions are all gone. Susan's body was never found. Investigators believe it lies deep in a mine shaft, remote, cold, and silent. Just like the place where this story ends. But Susan Powell's voice still echoes. Through her parents, who turned their grief into advocacy. Through the recordings she made, desperate to be heard. Through the headlines and the heartbreak. She became more than a victim, she became a warning. This is a story about missed signs. About the danger of silence. About how evil can hide in plain sight, dressed in normalcy, protected by doubt. And above all, it is a story about a woman who saw it coming, and a world that saw it too late.